I'd like you to imagine your dream life. See the version of you who has what you want to have, feels how you want to feel, and is who you want to be. I'm Brittany Hoopes, your hypnotherapist and manifestation coach, and this is the show where I'll teach you to master the full power of your mind, to guide you on your journey towards destination manifestation.
Take a step back for the ones who can't do that. Always separate from my past.
This is Destination Manifestation, a podcast for you, the ambitious dreamer who wants to blast through your conscious and subconscious blocks and manifest the life of your dreams. Well, hello there. If you're watching the video version, you can see I'm dressed like a little old lady right now. Not intentionally. It's raining out right now and it's very cold. And that just makes me want to be all cozy in my little old lady cardigan. But I am happy that you're here today. And I want to say that if you're already subscribed to the show, thank you. That really means a lot. And it makes me happy to know that you were taking your mindset development very seriously, because it is quite a serious thing, because it can have some serious results in your life. And today we're going to take that up to another level. We're going to just take that notch and just crank it up, because we have another manifesty bestie joining the show, who is also from reality TV. And it is one of your faves from Big Brother 23 and The Challenge, Kyland Young. Yes. I feel so fortunate to speak with Kyland here today, because we both share a lot in common, which we get into in the episode. But I think the biggest thing that we share in common is a love for mindset, positive thinking, and manifestation. He is into it all, which I just there's like literally nothing that I love more than having like heart to heart conversations with people who just like get it. And he's one of those people. So, and if you're listening to this, you're one of those people too. So I know you'll love it as well. And I will say, if there's anything that you get out of our conversation today, I want today's episode to serve as your reminder to just freaking live your life. I mean, really, just live it fully and deeply and as positively as you can. Because some of the stories that Kyland shares here today, I know will absolutely inspire you and remind you to do just that. I know it did for me too. So be sure to listen all the way to the end to hear how he mentally prepares for competition, some of the biggest lessons and reflections that he's learned from his time during Big Brother, and like so much more. So let's just go ahead and jump in.
Take a step back.
Well, Kyland Young, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Of course. Well, Kyland, I must say, for anybody who doesn't know, or I think I might have told you this before, but to give some background, Kyland was on BB23, Big Brother 23. I was on BB24, and we both placed fourth. So we share that in common. And I will say there have been several moments over the past year and a half where, I don't know if you're anything like me, Kyland, but you know, we don't go to play this game to get fourth. We want to get first. Anyone who plays wants to get first, right? But I will tell myself there's been some times where I was kind of like, dang, fourth. And then I'll remind myself, Kyland got fourth, Brittany. Kyland freaking got fourth. So you should feel good that you got fourth too. I will say that thought brought me a lot of peace and happiness, because you're a beast. You're absolutely awesome at competition shows. And I'm honored to share that similarity with you, at least in placement.
Well, I think no matter how many times you tell me that, I have trouble accepting it as like as a compliment that sounds like it is. And no, I really appreciate it. And it's such a tricky spot too, because people don't realize like fourth, you know, you're still in jury, but you don't get to go to the jury house. So you're just like, cause you made it so close to the end that they're like, oh yeah, we can't even take you there. So it's such a unique.
You have time to bring you to this other house. You just sit there in an empty hotel room and ruminate in your thoughts.
Yeah, exactly. Cause we got to vote in 2 days. But the funny thing on the manifesting side is that, just out the gate is that the last the second to last page of my journal, I wrote down, took a picture of the sentence. I was like, I'm never going to see the inside of the jury house. And I was like, oh, and that was true, except not what I should have been more specific. That was the problem. I should have been more specific. Yes.
That reminds me of a story on a previous episode when I was talking to Michael from my season. He did the same thing. He's like, make it to jury, make it to jury, make it to jury. And then what, it's jury, and he goes straight to jury. It wasn't win, And that's just so tricky. I don't know if you feel this way or not, but for me, it was like, okay, of course, like I want to manifest the win, but you're so focused like just getting in or just surviving week by week to really hold the vision of the win can sometimes be difficult. And how funny it is to say, don't go to jury, don't go to jury.
Yeah. I was like, never saw the jury house for sure.
Well, what's funny? So we share fourth in common, but we also share a love for mindset and positivity. And that is something that you champion on social media so beautifully and something it seems that you truly value and really embody in your life. So I want to talk all about that. I want to pick your brain here for a second. What does it mean to stay positive for you? Why is that so important to you?
I think, well, first off, one thing that I like to make space for is, because when I was younger, I didn't realize that there's definitely some like biological, neurological differences between people in terms of having a leaning that allows them to do that more naturally or less naturally. Like I'm very fortunate. I haven't really, so I may have had like an episode of like being depressed, but I know friends that suffer from depression, anxiety, and things that I really don't. And so for me, it was a matter of just like, well, why don't you just be more positive? And because for me,
there's nothing more annoying to hear in that instance too. When you're in that state, yeah.
And for me, it came so naturally. So I feel like when I was younger, for sure, I didn't have as much grace for that because I was like, well, this is easy, and I realized it's easy for me to do. And so, but as far as now, I think that's where we have to go into the conversation around like biology and and will and choices, because it is like, even if you have a disposition, so then it's just like, well, what can I do? Can I be more positive? Can I do a little bit more? And, your perspective dictates your reality in so many ways. And I say that once again with a grain of salt. Like it's not, there's some things that just suck and there's no way around it, but it's just like, okay, well, what can I do with it now? Cause now I'm here. And I think I'm just very solution oriented in that sense of, I think that's just like the logic leaning side of my brain too.
Oh, I understand that so much. And I totally get where you're coming from as somebody who has dealt with depression multiple times in my life. I mean, that's literally what brought me to hypnotherapy and brought me deeper into this, because it was like, I was feeling so depressed. My thoughts were so full, were so down that it was like, I needed to just grasp it. Like I always think of that thought of like 1% better. Like what's something that just feels 1% better? Cause you're not going to be like depressed one day and then feeling hunky dory amazing the other day. Those thoughts, you don't have access to those thoughts. Like they're like, your brain is literally filtering them out from your awareness or your ability to think. But it's like, okay, what's just something that feels just like, what's the lifeline here? Like what's just 1% better?
And the other side of it too, one thing that I don't know when I started this, but I had a conversation with someone that was talking, a lot of people will say that, oh, well, it's like, I'm not pessimistic. I'm just realistic. And I cannot remember when, but there was a time when I sat back, I was like, well, that doesn't make sense, because to be realistic would be to be optimistic. Because if you look at the news, for example, it's like everything negative in the news, people say, why is the news so negative? It's like, because that's not normal. Like most people weren't murdered yesterday. Most buildings weren't on fire yesterday. That's why we talk about it. If it was normal to talk about, hey, this person was nice to this person. If it wasn't normal to talk about, hey, this person is nice to this person, that would be a problem. I think that would be a bigger problem. If we're like in the news today, someone didn't murder somebody. It's like, great. Like that would be wild. So it's like, if you want to be realistic, then you would acknowledge that most of the things are going well, and that's something that's always stood out to me as a response to that sort of commentary.
That makes so much sense. You literally gave me full body goosebumps when you said that, because I don't think I've ever thought of it that way before. But yeah, it's news. It's out of the ordinary things you must be made aware of, which, typically is the bad things, because most of it is normal and good. This is really off subject, but I just had a major moment of deja vu while you were saying that, which was like really random. I was like, whoa, I've been here before. But Yeah. So you said that you, especially when you were younger, you kind of just thought, well, be positive. So does that mean that you've kind of always had this sort of positive mindset, or has there been a certain moment in time or moment in your life where this became more important to you?
I definitely would say when I was around 18, right after, towards the end of high school, maybe.
Yeah.
I had like a old elementary school or middle school PE coach that, I started doing like some direct sales for, and he got me into like super mindset stuff and was handy. And then one of my neighbors, from school, his dad was like a business owner and got me into like a lot of mindset stuff and power of positive thinking and Stephen Covey stuff and Jack Canfield and all these people. And so I started like reading those things and they really stuck with me. I probably never finished any of the books, but I just would read and pull out some highlights. I feel like a lot of the messaging was in there as far as like, how do you want to improve your situation? Start on the inside and then go out from there.
Yeah. Isn't it just sort of fascinating? I mean, here you have a memory of it. I have a memory. It was around the same time too. And I was about 18. Mine actually started with reading The Secret. I was like, oh, Oprah talks about this. I'll read this. I didn't know anything about positive mindset. Read it. And I was like, oh, we create our lives. Like that just was such a novel idea to me, but then like made sense. And so it's just kind of amazing how you kind of sort of feel that shift. So in your experience, how does one begin to cultivate a more positive mindset? I
mean, I think the first step would probably be taking inventory of things going on in your life, like to look at things from a realistic viewpoint, because it's really simple. Going back to my earlier point, it's really simple to say like, things suck, my life's hard and it's terrible. And it's just like, okay, well, pull out a piece of paper and a pen, start writing down what's real, what's going on right now in your life. What are and you can, that could be the negative. That could be like, hey, this is really hard. This circumstance, this situation, this history, this trauma, etc. But then it could also be like, okay, well, what am I doing now? Because you can also look at the difference between, responsibility and fault. And Will Smith has a great line where he talks about, we get caught up in whose fault something is sometimes. And it's like, it's not your fault if your partner cheats on you and ruins your marriage, but it's your responsibility to then decide like, what am I going to do now? Like, because it's not their responsibility to fix it, even though we want it to be, we want them to do something about it. We want to blame the person who gave us a rough childhood or who stole from us in a business deal or whatever. But it's just like, none of that changes the fact that it's our responsibility to now do something. And of course, everyone's going to come from a different place and a different circumstance and a different mindset, like we said. But then it's just like, okay, but you now you still have to do it. And when you write things down, I'm a big proponent of writing things down. Then it's just staring at you in the face like, oh, okay, wait. So now what? Now I have to do something. This is A plus B equals C. So what's C?
What is
or
it?
B?
Solve for C. Yeah. And that's so interesting when you say like, what's real? Because I find that that's something that, myself and a lot of people I talk to kind of struggle with. It's like, okay, because some things can feel so real to us, but when we really write it down and we look at it, we're like, is this fact? Like, could this hold up in the court of law? Or is this like, this person sucks? Is that my opinion on this? Like, is that, like, what is real? Is it my opinion on this thing? My thought about this thing? Or is it like the fact of the matter sort of thing? How do you begin to like separate the two as you're sort of thinking about your own mindset and things come up?
Well, I'm definitely at an advantage, I think, because like we've talked about before, like I'm on the spectrum and the autism spectrum disorder, probably the most common trait is like a literal leaning mindset. So, or literal leaning neurology. So it's just like, when someone says, I had a bad day, or I say I had a bad day, it's like, wait, did you have a bad day or did you have 14 seconds of bad things happen that you thought about for the rest of the day? Because those are different. And if I say one, then I'm not telling the truth all of a sudden. And we do that to ourselves all the time. And we're just like, and of course, like I said, everyone may have their situation that makes it easier or harder for them to hold on to it for a longer or shorter amount of time, but it doesn't change the fact that that thing only happened for 14 seconds. So if we're deciding, or less sometimes or more or whatever, or it's just like, it's just been a really hard month. It's like, has it been a really hard month, or did you have 2 minutes on this day, an hour on this day, 40 seconds on this day, and 3 hours on this day or whatever of a difficulty that you have decided counted for all 30 days because, that's not the same thing. And so I feel like taking that view and trying to share that with people is something that I found. But I do, it's also interesting because now in hindsight, it makes sense why I've had so much difficulty with, people will say like, facts don't care about your feelings, but it's like people's feelings don't care about your facts is something I learned very often. I run into and being frustrated about, but once again, it doesn't change the fact that that's the reality. The reality is that people operate that way. And so now what are you going to do about it?
What are you going to do about it? Decide where you're going next. And I think that's a beautiful idea as well. This idea of acceptance. So it's like, okay, you got the facts now. You can determine your thought about those facts, your judgment, your thought, whatever it might be. But regardless of what you're thinking or what has happened, what are you going to do with that? It almost feels like a crossroads at a certain point, right? It's like I can go A or I can go B or I can go any sort of thing. How do you determine where you move next? If maybe you're encountering like a difficulty and you've accepted it and you think, okay, what am I going to do next? How do you make sure that path that you're going on next is pointed in the direction of, your goal, your result, your manifestation, whatever it might be?
I think it is a matter, once again, of just accepting the fact that we can't, there may not be a correct way or right answer or anything like that. And we just have to kind of accept the decision that we make. I love, Tom Bilyeu says, it's difficult for me to accept that while I can do almost anything, I can't do everything. And so it's just like, there are so many things that we may want to do or so many choices that we may want to pick. So when I feel like I'm doing this well, I take the step of, people say begin with the end in mind. So I zoom forward, and I zoom forward like 5 years or 10 years or maybe just 1 year, whatever it is. And I'm like, okay, so this is where I want to be and how I want to feel then. Which one of these decisions probably will do that? And I would say I am terribly inconsistent at doing this. I think humans as a whole are terribly inconsistent at foresight. But when I do it, I feel really a lot more conviction in my decision because I'm like, you know what? This is the decision that I feel puts me here. So I'm going to do this.
Isn't that such a chicken before the egg sort of thing, right? So if you are to do that, there's all these millions of paths that you could pick. You're looking with the end in sight. You're thinking from the future. You're thinking, okay, the Kyland who has this or is this way or has accomplished this, what decision would he make right now? Because I got to connect point A to point B. And it isn't even necessarily that might be the correct decision, but because you believe that that's the decision that will get you there, you're probably better off having made that decision because the thoughts you're having about it.
And life in general, it makes total sense. And life in general is this contradiction of nothing matters and everything matters, in the sense of we're a tiny speck on this tiny speck in this one of 100 billion galaxies. And so it's just like, how important is this choice of which car I'm going to get or what school I'm going to go to or who I'm going to be with or whatever, when I barely even exist on the timeline? But at the same time, zoom it into us. And it's just like, well, like, it's very important because it's going to make a difference for all of these things. And like, both of those things are true at the same time. And I feel like we just have to hold more of these contradictions that we pull from to find peace. And I think we pull from like, hey, it'll be fine either way, because even if it's not fine, I love, I think it was like a comedian, Bill Burr, or somebody was talking about like, you just kind of believe that everything's going to work out. And he's like, because if it does, then great. And then if it doesn't, well, at least you didn't spend all this time feeling like it was going to not work out. Now it's just like, all right, well, now I only have to deal with it once instead of the worrying about it this whole time.
Creating your own suffering and your own struggle. I feel like I was watching episode of Amazing Race a couple weeks ago, and it was like one of the teams didn't know that someone was so far behind them that there was no way. So they thought they were in last because they're like, oh, they're right behind us. But it's like, oh, this person would take days to finish, like to catch up to you. And they were having such a miserable time, like the whole time, because they thought that they were going to be eliminated. But ends up they were so far behind. And it was just like such a beautiful reminder to myself that's like, we create our own struggle. And this morning, I actually was listening to Abraham Hicks, and she was describing that, like, what if our manifestations, our goals, our dreams, what if we only had those desires because by focusing where we wanted to go, it created the journey of choices and decisions and experiences that lead us there. Like, what if it wasn't ever about the goal? It wasn't ever about the manifestation. It was only by focusing on it, it fleshed out this beautiful journey of choices. And so, like, why not enjoy it then? If that were to be true, why not just freaking enjoy as much as you could of it, you know?
I mean, yes. And I feel like, so I like you, it sounds like, listen to a lot of different podcasts and books and all these things. And so you or your audience may get tired of me referencing other people's words, but I feel like it's much better to learn from other people rather than just learn from my own experience, because I could never catch up. So it's like, if I could learn from 50 years of experience in 10 minutes from this interview or clip or whatever, then I want to. So I preface that because another conversation, I think it was Ed Mylett, was talking in an interview, and he was just like, you know, which, and so many people have said some reference around, like, you think you have time. And it's like, what if Kobe Bryant the week before the helicopter was like, hey, by the way, you have one more week. If he knew that you had one more week, it's just like he didn't feel like he had one more week left. None of us thought that. And most people don't. So it's like, we can stress out over like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And then it's just like, people, I saw this somewhere, is like, people get a terminal diagnosis of cancer or something like that, and they'll be like, hey, just so you know, you have like 5 years left, and then they'll change their whole lives. So like, you know what, I'm just gonna live my life to the fullest and all these things. It's like, hey, that's true for most of us, and whether it's 50 years or 5 years or 5 days, you're terminal. Like, something is terminal. And so when are you gonna decide to like just start living and like as if you were dying? Because you are.
Because we all are. It's just some of us know a little bit sooner than others, or have been told, or this or that, or maybe not even that, because then I've also heard in some instances where somebody's told that they have a terminal illness, they go live in their pure truth and happiness and love, and then mind body connection, they heal, you know, which is like,
absolutely.
Oh, just so mind blowing to me. I mean, I hate to share this to be any sort of downer, but I feel like I can speak about this experience now. When I was feeling depression and I was feeling suicidal, that was the thought that was like, okay, if I am going to live on this earth, let's freaking go. Let's live. Let's do this. Yeah. Why would I make myself miserable at this job I didn't like? Why would I keep doing these things because I think I need to? Like, let's just do it. And this was before Big Brother. And it was when I decided to, like, I'm just going to start my business. Like, this has been my dream. It's been my dream for almost a decade. Like, let's just do it. And it's just amazing how the world just opens up to you when you like bet on yourself and you know, like, it feels like you're kind of stepping out of the plane without a parachute, but like, it's also like, it's just making the decision to live. And like, what does that look like? That would be different for me, making the decision to live versus you versus anybody else. But like, what does it mean for you, Kyland? I'm curious. Like, what is you make the decision to freaking live. Like, what does that encompass for you?
For me, it really is about impact and just kind of trying things and loving. Like it's, I feel like it will sound so cliche or corny, but it's just like, I want the world to be better because I was here, is a line that I've thought about a lot. And it is, and that could be in so many different ways. You know, that could be like from one-on-one conversations. That could be from, you know, donations to different nonprofits or different work or other things. But I know that I want to try and make a difference. And I think that's also why, to my recollection, I can't really think of times where I've ever really held hate for anything or anyone. I think that it is I can get angry, I could be bothered, or I could disagree, but I think that there's just too much going on and too much I want to do to spend any energy in that. And so it's just like, I feel it's really difficult to applaud for others and to do the work you want to do while you're focused on someone else in a negative way.
You realize what's the word? Not swamp, but like the quicksand in that. Yeah. To be like caught in the quicksand of hate, it like just keeps you stuck. And while you're looking at everything else that this life can offer and that you could do. I mean, sometimes I get, which I try not to think about this too much, but sometimes I get a little like bummed out when I think, oh man, like I have lists of things I want to do, like lists of goals.
Yeah.
Probably could fill 20 different lifetimes. Like there's no way. It's impossible. Like you were referencing before, like it's impossible to do it all. And sometimes I get a little bummed. I'm like, oh man, like I really do hope this whole reincarnation thing is like an actual thing, because I got lists. I got things I want to do that fill up more than one lifetime. And so every moment you're spending in that mired down in that hate, you're holding yourself separate than being able to go out and do those other things.
And gratitude is huge in that too, because I think that as I think about these lists,
how does that play?
I think about these lists of things and it's like, man, I'm so sad that there's all these things I can do and I won't get to do them. And then you could take a step back, like, wait, like there's so many things in this list that a lot of people can't even dream about because they may not have access or legs or cognitive function or health or time or whatever. And it's like, there's all these things I can, like the fact that I get to even think about these things is a privilege in itself. So then it's just like that, taking that step. And I say that with leaving space for, it's okay. Like, you know, there's nothing to be gained with comparative suffering or like people deciding like, hey, like this is, you know, you can't feel bad because this other person is in this worse situation. Like that's I think a unhelpful, unreasonable thing to focus on as well. But
yeah,
but you don't have to focus on that side of it. You don't have to focus on like, hey, this person can't do that, but you could focus on, I can do this. And I'm grateful for that.
Yes. Oh, that makes so much sense. So you mentioned that you like to write things down. Like, so are you a journaler? Is that, I mean, you did say there was a line in your journal before BB. Is that like a practice? Like, what are some of your personal favorite practices to help sort of shift your mindset, get in a good feeling mindset for you?
Well, I am a, journaler in progress. I have journals and I will write in them for a certain amount of time and then fall off. And I have been finding success recently. Yeah. I have been finding success recently with like, there's a journal Inside Then Out that has like prompts and they're super short and that's been helpful for sure. But in general, that's kept me on track to journal as like a little practice. Cause then I don't feel as overwhelmed with like, okay, what am I going to write about and for how long and how much? And it's like, okay, I only have one page here and one question.
Yeah.
And that's as much as I can write in this page because it's pre-printed. So that, I think for me, it was just a process of finding what I can do. And then it has sparked other ideas that I've written, but I still, as far as like the more free journaling, I still have that written in, you know, I have a bunch of notes on my phone. I have, if I open it up and say like add to journal, there's probably 20 different notes between now and the last 6 years of like stuff that but I could have added to a journal I had intentions to. On my computer, I think there's like a Word document, a Google document that all have their own journals on them. So, but I'm trying to hold the grace. Yes.
I'm literally pulling this up right now. You want to know something I'm like almost sheepish to admit? So I have a note on my phone that's a gratitude list. Do you want to guess how many gratitudes are on this list? I've been adding to it for like maybe 7 years.
What do you mean by gratitude list? This is a list of
like things I'm thankful for on this list in my phone. My phone like glitches when I open up this list. Okay. It's like so long. I have 2,867 things on this list. I mean, that's a little obsessive, but hey, I love adding to it. And you know, it's almost like a journal because then sometimes I'll just scroll back through and I like to see what past Brittany was grateful for.
That's awesome though.
It helps kind of ground you, you know, when you go back and you're like, oh, past Brittany was super grateful for this like tiny little New York apartment I had that you couldn't even see any grass, you know, as now I'm in my home here in Texas where grass is abundant. You know, it's like, it's so interesting to recognize like it's all so relative, you know, it's all so relative. You have to remember that. Like to your point that, you know, what a blessing and how grateful it is to even have the opportunity to be grateful for these things, you know?
And it's also the perspective, you know, from time, like you said, you can look back and just be like, wow, like I was so grateful for this. But I think that you could also do almost the opposite of like, what's the things that maybe I wasn't grateful for at the time that maybe I was even upset about that now is like, I'm like, oh, wow, I'm so glad that this happened. And it's, I've been I've been focusing on like, I have a couple of tattoos. They're pretty discreet, and there's the new one I want to get is the pyramids, and it came from the Alchemists. And
that is like one of my favorite books. I read it at my wedding. It was literally like, we didn't do Bible verses.
Oh my gosh.
We read The Alchemist. Yeah.
I can imagine some of the love quote like in The Alchemist.
Oh, it's perfect. It's perfect.
Yeah. Wow. Hadn't heard that. I love that. And it's, if you haven't read it, you're going to have to skip the next 30 seconds because it's like the spoiler at the end, but highly recommend you read it. But there's the scene where he's digging at the very end for the treasure, and he's talking to God, the universe, the energy of the world, the spirit of the world. And he's saying like, you knew the whole time how this was going to turn out. Like, couldn't you have saved me from some of the pain? Like anything, like even just that last day in Egypt where I got jumped, like, couldn't you have saved me just from that one thing? Cause I went through everything else. And the response was, well, if I had, then you wouldn't have seen the pyramids, and they're beautiful, aren't they? And it just was like such a small thing that like chokes me up now because it makes me reflect on like, okay, like what is the thing, like what are the pyramids? What were the pyramids of the past difficulties of my life? What was the things that, was a rough path, but like there was something to be gained from it. And that's, something I think about a lot. And I try and bring that with me into the present when something's happening where it's just like, ooh, this sucks. But let me look 5 years. 5 years looks good. So I guess whatever this thing is, it had to happen because otherwise I wouldn't be there.
Otherwise you wouldn't be there. Oh my gosh, you're making me tear up too, because I resonate with that so freaking deeply. I literally had a conversation with my husband the other night. Anyone who listens to the show, I'm very transparent with my even in progress manifestations, and we've been wanting to grow our family. And this past whole year has been a process of wanting to do that. And there's a lot of disappointments along the way when it's like, nope, not this month, right? And we had that discussion where like 2023 doesn't look like it's the year to have a baby or to get pregnant. But what did we gain from this year? Like, I'm not going to look back on this year and think, oh, it was a wasted year. It was a lost year. It was an unsuccessful year. No, what did we gain? And we literally were talking about that. We're like, oh my gosh, our relationship has deepened so much. Like our ability to communicate has deepened so much. Like there was all these amazing things that came out of it. And it's literally like an affirmation of mine that I keep on repeating to myself, like, it's written. It's done. Like, baby, in this instance, going to be there. I'm going to be a parent. Like, that's a thing. So if it's written, let me just enjoy reading the story. Yeah. Like, let me just enjoy reading the story then.
Did you watch About Time?
No. Should I?
A film. Yeah, I think so. It is, I think it's a very sweet film, and it's a great commentary on like, on a lot of things. So this guy, something about like the men in his family, I don't know if it's all of them or just some of them, can time travel, but only in their own life. So like they can go back to any point in their life. But once you have the catch is once you have a kid, you can't go past that point anymore. You can, but think about the fact of how creating a child works. Like, you have millions, billions of sperm and coming in at the right moment. So that means a different sperm would impregnate. If anything changes at all, if you change anything, if you change any tiny little thing. So the guy like goes back for his first time, like past his, the birth of one of his kids. And then he like comes back to the present and he like has a different kid. And he's like, oh, wait,
who are you?
This is, who's you? So it's kind of like, this path that you're on, this story or whatever, it just is like, when you zoom forward to having a parent, I don't think you're going to sit there and hold the kid and just be like, I wish you were different. Like, I wish it wasn't you. But if anything happened differently, that kid wouldn't exist. So
it would have been, right? It needs to happen at the exact timing that is already, I believe, at least predetermined. Like it is, and we were joking. We were like, oh, maybe our future kids, like somewhere, the spirit of our kid is like, guys, would you just adopt me already? Like, what's the hang up here? We were just kidding, but like, it's like, maybe there is like, it is what it is, whatever route it ends up taking. And that is just, I don't know. I hope that perspective can apply it to your own situation. Whoever's listening can offer you some peace, because it's also a deep belief in like the thing that you want to experience in life, whatever goal it might be. Like, what if it just is? It just is. And so how are you going to enjoy from point A to point B? Point B is there. Destination manifestation, name of the show. It's there. How are you going to enjoy that journey there? Let me ask you this. It's a little off subject, but this was a question from for somebody on Instagram. Have you ever had a time where you were feeling maybe a little hopeless? And I'm curious if you had, or if you have experience with others who might have been feeling this way. What could you do to kind of start believing in yourself and boosting your self-confidence? Is there some time where you didn't feel so confident and then you were able to turn that around and start feeling more confident again? I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Ooh, I mean, once again, I think my brain goes to contradictions, and because I feel like I can think of times where I jump to like, hey, you just fake it till you make it. You're just like, hey, I'm just going to smile and think positively and push past it and not dwell on it. And then I think of other times where like the thing that needed to happen was very much like Inside Out, the Pixar film, where it's like, I just needed to feel that. I just need to sit in that, need to cry about it and just be sad. And then that's how I got through it. So I feel like just figuring out, what type of scenario is this? Am I wallowing in sadness or am I experiencing sadness? And I think that those are different. And so it's just like, okay, if I'm wallowing, I'm probably wasting time. I probably need to shift my perspective. If I'm just experiencing it, that's okay. That's normal and natural and part of the process of moving forward. So I'm going to accept that I'm human and I have to have this emotion. And then I'm going to allow it to run its course and move naturally past it.
Oh my God. My mind's being like a little blown here right now because I think you articulated so beautifully something I'm always talking with my clients about and always like just dissecting because you're right. There's two sides of this. Sometimes you need to be in it because Lord knows we know what happens when you deny and push away emotion and what you're feeling and eat and drink and do all the numbing things in order to not feel that thing. That comes with its whole other host of issues. Sometimes we just need to feel it. But then it's like, okay, how do we know when it's time to reframe, when it's time to kind of get back on the horse and go towards the direction where we want to go? And I think are you wallowing or are you not? I'm just curious. These are really hard questions, but how do you what's your distinction with that? Like, how do you know when it's not serving you versus something that needs to be felt? I don't even think I know this answer, but I'm curious to learn from you.
I feel like that's such a contextual thing. I think that it's going to vary by situation, and that I don't say that to be a cop-out, but I say that to try and be responsible in the terms of everyone dealing with their own situation and feelings and circumstances. And so I think that if I were to recommend some sort of process to try and figure that out, I mean, it probably would come down to speaking to someone else, like letting it come outside of me. And you could let it come outside of you in two ways. I think that one, you could write it down. I'm going to come back to that pretty consistently. But then two, after you write it down, you can talk to, a therapist, a coach, a friend, a mentor, someone that you appreciate and respect. That could be your parents or, like I said, a sibling or whoever, partner, and just saying like, hey, I'm thinking about this. And I feel like even I would vary it to, there's sometimes when I have a situation that I'm facing and I'm wondering what should I do. And there's people that I don't want to ask because I know they're going to give me an answer that I don't appreciate. And I'm like, I need to ask that person. Like, that's all the more reason I probably, and there's some, they're just like toxic downers that are, and that's different.
Like,
but there are other ones. It's not safe to ask. That's very different than like uncomfortable to ask. And there's definitely people I'm like, I know what this person's going to say and tell me to do, and I don't want to do that. And that's probably the person I need to ask. And it's funny because I feel like most of the time they probably do say exactly what I thought they're going to say, and they're right. And then sometimes they surprise me. And then they're even more right when they surprise me in those times, because it's like, because they were coming from that perspective that I knew they would, but then they had even more insight to say something different. And then I'm like, oh, and for myself, even I've noticed, you're growing up and you're like, my parents don't know anything when you're a rebellious kid. And I wasn't even rebellious. It's a wrong word, but like ignorant kid, dumb kid. And I think back and I'm like, oh, most of the times I disagree with my parents. Not every time, but most of the time they were right. Isn't that wild? This person that experienced so much more life than me knew something. And it's just like, and I'm fortunate that I have that relationship with my parents. I can talk to them and ask them and have such a positive relationship. And I'm very grateful for it. But even if it's not them, there's probably someone else you can talk to.
And it's so funny that you say that, because as a practitioner, a hypnotherapist, I mean, there are some instances where I'm working with a client, and to accept and process the feeling and feel the feeling is what's needed. There are other instances, same-ish situation, but it seems more fitting to help that person get out of where they are, maybe the wallowing piece of it, and get back refocused where they need to be. And so just hearing you say that, like, sometimes you just need that outside perspective. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm that outside perspective sometimes for people. Does that mean I don't need outside perspective? No, I need that too. I have my own hypnotherapist, my own coach. Like, I have people that can help. I guess I always think of like anybody, whether you're talking to a coach or a friend or a parent or anybody who you feel safe to share. It's kind of like, I don't know, our long hair folks might understand, but like when I'm trying to curl the back of my head and I can't see back here, so I need a mirror to kind of see within the mirror and see the back of my head. That's kind of what a good trusted friend, parent, coach just holds up the mirror and says, I know you can't see back there, but like here's where it is. Or even sometimes helps you connect some of the puzzle pieces. I know that happens a lot, that like an outside perspective, I'm sure even when you like talk with a friend or you're that friend that somebody comes to, you're like, can't you see that A is connected to B? And they're like, what? Like, I never saw that.
Oh my gosh.
But an outsider can,
Yeah, you can be way too close to a situation, and sometimes the simple solutions are easiest to see, like with a fresh set of eyes. And I think that most people have probably experienced that in one way or another, and on our own. And so it's just like, okay, how do I expedite this? And it's like, okay, let me grab somebody else's fresh eyes because they haven't been here with me.
Yeah. And that's even a question sometimes I'll ask when I'm working with clients. I'm like, if your friend, a friend you really love, came to you with this issue, what would you tell them? And they're like, oh, well, of course, A, B, C, and D. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like A, B, C, and D. Yay. Great. And it's just so funny how just getting in that third person perspective helps. You can't, what's the saying? You can't read the label from inside the bottle. You gotta be able to have some perspective on it, So Kyland, let me ask you this. So you were a comp beast on Big Brother. We've seen you more recently here be some more comps on The Challenge. Both shows incredibly physical and very mentally challenging as well. Now, the physical challenges for us watching at home are much easier to see. But how do you handle those mental challenges that arise in either show, either game, anytime you're competing in that sort of sense?
I'm sure there's some element of it that's natural. And so I want to, once again, give, room for, like in our season, Hannah Chada has probably the best memory of almost anyone that I've met in my entire life. And such an incredible memory. She's like a super genius. She's like a baby sister of the Cookout and of so many, and she's highly intelligent, amazing memory. But she wouldn't be able to win the memory comps a lot of the times because the pressure of competition wasn't something that was natural for her. So she would on any day have a much better memory, but like I could beat her, somebody else could beat her because of that and it was kind of an intangible thing. So I think that there's one element of like, how do you perform in different types of pressure too? Like that's a competitive pressure. She's also going to medical school and currently overseeing like a whole wing at this hospital. And
she can handle that.
She can handle that pressure. Like, so she can handle pressure. It just is like pressure in this one specific circumstance of competition that for whatever reason wasn't natural to her. And so, I definitely know that there's, there probably is some difference in it that comes naturally. But as far as like what I might
do, you experience pressure when you compete, like in these shows?
So usually not, but I would say no. I'd say pretty consistently when I have messed myself up or gotten my own head, it hasn't been a matter of pressure. It's more been a matter of some sort of, probably like ego related competitiveness or something like that. I think about my very last veto on, Big Brother. I was so annoyed that I lost the HOH because I just made such a dumb decision. And I was like, this was mine to win. I literally X1 and I think he tried like 5 guesses or something like that on this puzzle. And I misunderstood something and approached it the wrong way. And then as soon as I understood what it was, I was like, oh, And I did it on my first guess. And I was like, I could have done this on my first guess a long time ago and won and been fine. But then, so in the veto, I was so annoyed with myself that I was like, you know what? I have great balance. I have great memory. The very first, back and forth, we had a balance beam. Funny enough, you said balance beam, and like a seesaw balance beam.
Comp, Kyland. I remember watching that.
So we had the seesaw balance beam. The first round, crush. And I was like, I am so good at this. And I'm so annoyed with myself for how underperformed I did at the HOH. I want to make sure I remind, like this is, I said egos for sure. I was like, I want them to know how good I am at this. So I want to make sure that they know they don't stand a chance. So I'm going to go so fast, even though I just went fast enough to beat them and I could just keep this pace. I'm like, no, this isn't good enough. I want people to feel demoralized. I got in Kobe Bryant. Like I was like, I want them to rethink. I want them to rethink, like, should they even be here? Like, so then Kobe Bryant had a quote where he's like,
laughing because I can so relate to this. That there's like some ego beast that comes out of you towards the end of Big Brother.
Oh my
like I can relate. That's the only reason why I'm laughing.
No, it was like, yeah, I was saying Kobe Bryant has a interview where he talks about, you know, I would play basketball when I would go against somebody. I wanted them to reconsider, should I be a basketball player? Like I wanted them to reconsider their whole life. And that's why I felt in this moment. I was like, I'm so annoyed with myself for that. And I was like, I am good enough to win this competition as I've shown. So I won the first round and I was like, let's just dominate the rest. So I speed up. And as I speed up, I don't think I fall off this beam a single time. I just go so fast that I keep knocking out the ball. And I was like, okay, I should slow down. But instead I decide, you know what? No, that's not good enough. If I slow down, that's not going to accomplish this goal. So I'm just going to speed up. I'm going to go even faster. And I was not saying this out loud. I should have. I feel like one of the lessons I've been learning in these shows is when I speak out loud, my thoughts, it helps me visualize them better and respond and adapt to them better.
It's that third, it's that you distance yourself. You say it out loud.
And I didn't. I was in my head saying like, well, what if I just speed up? And I was like, slowing down would also help. But now I'm just going to speed up. And I did that again, kept knocking out the ball, lose this competition immediately. And I was just like, so, you know, and then doubly annoyed with myself because then I was like hopeless basically. And it was, so I think that I'll get in my head and stuff like that. I'll get in my head in my own way more so than like a pressure. It's more like, oh, like what, like, you know, trying to do something like that. And so I will say, I think fortunately I learned from that. I don't think I've had that happen again in that exact way. I think that that's something I've learned from where I'm like, hey, you can just try and win something. Like you don't have to try and prove a point when you win something.
No extra credit points,
you know. Yeah, no extra credit points.
You know, something like that. It's so funny that you say that because, you know, it's almost like if you would have been able to say it out loud, which you've now learned, or like, what if we could say, which this is going to be annoying if I say it, but like, what if losing that veto was to learn the lesson? If it's all divinely written and it's all 100%. Said and done, what if it was to learn that lesson for all the other reality shows you were going to do in the future, which the universe knew of? So that, you know, that particular mistake, you now have a tool that's like, okay, if I distance myself from it, if I say it out loud, if you would have spoke the words of ego, Kyland, other part of Kyland could have heard that and been like, no, dude, why are we? Yeah. No, don't slow down. Like, what you thinking? Like, check yourself a little bit, you know? And it's so interesting to like realize.
I think that I believe in that fully. I believe in like, hey, like that was the point, I guess. The point of that was for me for learn that, or at least even if it's not the point, because maybe I could pull back and say, you know, to suggest I know the point maybe is to, in its own sense, egotistical or something, but at least I could say like, well, here is something to take away. Here's a reason. Here's something to take away from this, that a lesson to be learned. And
again, the positive reframe of that experience.
Yes, positive reframe. It's so funny that
you said. I also do want to say, because I don't think a lot of people understand. I don't know what it is, and I'm very fascinated by the psychological whatever. I've talked to Heisem about this too. You know, he's a psychiatrist. Like, what happens to people at in-game Big Brother in their psyches that create these things that maybe we wouldn't have otherwise done? Like, I remember when I won my last veto. I mean, I was out the door right after Michael. If everyone had their own say. But I won that veto and I saved myself and I lasted another week. I turned into a mafia boss, Kyland, after that. Like, I just got so big for my britches. I think Monty literally called me. He's like, Brittany turns into this mafia boss, like mobster coming in here demanding things. And it's so funny because like at the time I didn't feel that way. I couldn't see it. I was too in it, you know? But then like reflecting back on it, I'm like, oh, who did I think I was storming up to his room, trying to call the shots just because I won this one veto and saved myself? Like, it's just ridiculous, you know? Do you think there's anything anyone could do to mentally train to handle those high pressure situations?
I think so. I think something that people could try is just placing themselves there to the best of their ability. So I feel like when I prepare for a competition or a puzzle or anything like that, some sort of challenge in these games, I would think about, I'd put myself in that situation. I'd be like, okay, like I try and create those stakes when they don't exist. And so, if I'm running and I'm getting tired up a hill, I'm like, hey, like you're going to be in some spot where you are feeling this. And this is maybe going to make the difference between you winning or losing that game or moment or time. What are you going to do then? Because whatever you do now, you're probably going to do then. And, the SEALs actually, I'm reading David Goggins' book, if you've ever read his stuff, and he talks about how, part of their ethos is that you don't rise to the level of your expectations, you fall to the level of your training. And so it's like, I expect myself to like, you want to show up in this way, but at the end of the day, you're just when you're exhausted and the chaos is happening around you, you're going to, the best you could do is whatever you prepared to do, not what you were hoping you were going to do. And whatever you prepared and practiced and fall to the level of that training of like, okay, like this is what I've done. And so I think that that's something that I try and embody and think about is like, okay, this is what I'm going to do when all hell breaks loose. So like, let me imagine them in that situation now. So I think preparation is as simple as that. It's like preparation. If it's the very first time it's happening, then most of us aren't good at things the first time. So if I imagine like, oh, this isn't the first time this has happened. This is the 100th time it's happened. I've already done this.
Yeah.
I think that
know
makes
what
a
to
difference.
do. And so that's so interesting. So are we talking like mental visualization, like mental preparation? Or are you talking about like, I'm working out and I might encounter this kind of physical demand on my body. So let's do it here now in this workout. I
think both to the best of your ability, because I can't create a lot of things that we experience on these shows, like at home, like, Frenchie was talking.
Disclaimer. Let's not. Anyone who's listening, don't recreate it.
So Frenchie was talking about how he would practice wall comp, like he would put a board, I think, on his tractor and then lean it forward and then sit on it for like hours at a time. Like he had that ability to do that. And I didn't have a tractor, so I wasn't able to do that. So it's just kind of like, okay, maybe I can't prepare in that way, but I could think about it mentally when I'm doing some other exercise, like, okay, when I'm hurting, what am I going to do? And then wherever I can, though, put myself in that position, I do. They talk about for tests at school, if you are able to sit in the classroom where you're going to take the test, you will most likely do better. If you can study in that classroom and sit in a chair and wear the same outfit, you will most likely do better than if you didn't do those things, because you put yourself in that situation. It's just comfort.
Yeah.
Comfort,
and
like preparedness.
The preparedness, when you're feeling the feelings of comfort and preparedness that are fueled by thoughts that help you feel that way, how does that influence your actions? You do better on the test. You end up getting a better result from it. Like, how interesting is that? And this is a lot of times when I'm working with clients in hypnosis. Again, hypnosis just being a deep state of relaxation, very similar to meditation. And we visualize, not only do we visualize the success of that thing, but we'll throw in obstacles. We'll say, okay, well, what if this happens? Rehearse it. Send those instructions to your subconscious mind. So the mind's like, yep, been here before, know how to do this. So that when it kicks in, you're ready. You're prepared. You aren't doing it the first time because you've done it a million times in your mind already. And I love that. That's so great. Well, Kyland, I literally have like a whole other podcast worth of questions that we're just not going to be able to get here today. And that bums me out. Maybe if you'll come and join me again, I would love to talk about other things. But my kind of last question I want to ask you here today is like, I ask everybody this, like, dream with me, manifested version of you. The version of you is created, the future results that you're working towards, your goals, your dreams, what you want to create. Who is he? How, paint me that picture, paint us that picture. What can we expect from future Kyland? Dream a little bit with me here, if you feel comfortable.
I love it. Well, I feel like some of this I've for sure have experienced in terms of, one was like a kind of like a body work hypnotherapy Reiki sort of session where we zoom forward in the future. And I've had this crazy experience where I like felt in that place of my future body. And I was like, yo, like, even I couldn't, see specific details, but I was like, no, like things are good. Like things are good. And I feel proud of what I'm doing, what I've done. And so for me, a lot of my life, like I said, is like, I want the world to be better because I'm here. So I feel like I can see looking in the future, like, okay, I'm making significant impact, in the world in a positive way that is tangible and something I can see and trace for different causes that are important to me. I am, similar, I have a lot of goals around building a family and what that looks like, as far as like how, the type of parent and family environment that I want to create. I want to, be a multiple time challenge champion. I love this game and, we gotta keep watching this season to see, is this the first win or is this like, a step towards the first win? We don't know. But I know that that's something I envision for sure is like is having done that. And, I think that those are some of the things that come to mind for sure. And I don't know, it definitely varies on the day. And some days I sit and I'm like, it's already done. And then some days I'm like, ooh, can that happen? And then I'm like, for all of these things. But yeah. I think that in itself is like, I'm feeling more and more certainty around it. And funny enough, one recommendation I have on content side is on Netflix. They made a live action show version of this anime series called One Piece. If you haven't watched that, I would recommend it. I'd say the theme of this show is friendship and manifestation of your goals. And
my perfect show.
Exactly. I can't recommend it enough. It's oddball because it came from like anime manga series, but just to feel though that theme, I think is worth it and pretty universal if you just watch it and enjoy it. I went in, I hadn't seen the anime, hadn't read the manga or anything, and I just was like thoroughly enjoyed it, cried every other episode, and took in that concept of like the manifesting, and I've been holding on to that even more. So as someone who already believed that, I feel like I've held into it more, and so now I've been embodying that for all of these goals. And so I want to continue to do that. And that's what I'm feeling more and more, certainty around, and is manifesting these exact destinations.
You know how you had impact on me? I'm going to tell you, you being so kind after Big Brother. Like, I just remember being at Todrick's house and everyone was very nice, but you stand out specifically because it felt like you were like, caring for us. Like you knew, like you remember how it is when you get out of the Big Brother house, your mind's spinning, people recognize you now, your world is turned upside down. And it just felt like you were somebody who was like, if you need me, I remember you were like, here's my number. Like if you have any questions, you need me, like don't hesitate to reach out. I just felt like, there's somebody, I don't think I ever reached out to you directly to ask a question, at least that I can recall, but just knowing that I could just meant all the world of a difference. And I'll say you specifically made me want to reach out to everybody BB25 related and just be one of those people to them. I know they had others, but like just say, hey, there's somebody here that you could. Because even just a small thing like that means a lot when somebody is in need. At least I felt like I was in need mentally. My mind was spinning,
After that, everyone's in need after that. And, and people did that for me. I'm Derek and Cody, first call out of the house. They reached out and, so like someone else did. And I think that, there's an element of paying it forward. And, I'm just such a believer in like kindness on such a deep level. And like you said, it is small actions. And, probably one last story I would say is I remember, I was listening to this interview. I don't know if it was Tony Robbins or someone else was talking about how the person who I believe shot Reagan, who didn't die, but prior to that was at an event where the vice president was there. And this guy just wanted to get attention because he was troubled. And that's why he acted out. And there was an event where he could shoot like the vice president, and he supposedly had his hand on the gun, was reaching into his jacket and bumped this woman. And the woman in front of him was like, turned around, was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that I bumped into you." And just like put her hand on, I was like, "I'm so sorry. You okay?" And he was just like, that moment of kindness was so significant. He's like, this person's so kind and so sweet. I can't let them witness something terrible. I'm going to go. And then went home. And then obviously it caused other things, but at the same time, it's just like, sometimes we don't know that little tiny difference that they can make in someone's life, and in that scenario in the world. So things can just being kind, like, you know, we just never know what impact that can make. So I'm just such an advocate
it's bigger
for
than
it.
you could ever know. It really, truly is.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, Kyland, I'm so inspired. Goodness. I need to go figure out what I should do after this conversation, because I feel amped. I feel inspired. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective and just everything.
No,
I hope others are feeling the way I'm feeling right now. I know they are.
Well, I would just want to take the time to thank you. I mean, you know, for all the kind words, but in general, you know, having me here and the flexibility and timing. And then also just, you know, I understand how work intensive it could be to create a podcast and put it together. So I just want to acknowledge the fact that you're doing this so consistently.
Thanks. It is a lot of work.
So you're putting in so much work. You're so consistent. You're doing all the things. You're planning, and you're creating a show. And I've gotten to see a lot of clips just to see that you are putting out some positivity in the world, having impact, helping people build themselves up and push towards their own goals and manifestations. And I just want to commend you for that, because it's huge and it's making such a big difference already. And it's really beautiful to see. And I'm glad to know you and to know somebody that's having this sort of impact. And yeah, I'm proud and excited for you to continue.
And now I have this on record for when those days that I'm like, why the hell did I decide to do this? This is so much work. I can go listen to it. And I got amped up. I think everybody, you just got like 30 more episodes out of me just because this comment. So thank you.
No, I mean it. I'm so glad.
That's really,
I'm so
really
glad.
kind.
Thank you.
Yeah, take a step back.
I just want to thank you, travelers, for joining us here today on this journey towards destination manifestation. You are absolutely inspiring. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to this podcast. And there's one other thing I'd like you to do after listening to today's episode, and it's this. Head on over to BrittanyHoopes.com/email. I'll link to it in the show notes. And you can download a free, did you hear me? That is free, $0 manifestation hypnosis audio. Now I'm telling you guys, this is like the real deal. I give this to all my clients too, and I have heard some pretty tremendous stories from this audio. Now I know it's January. It's the start of a new year. It's 2024. Let's make it the best that we can be. If you are ready to be serious about 2024, to have it be one of the best years yet for you, you're going to have to think something that you didn't think in 2023. I can tell you that much. You're going to have to think new thoughts in order to create new things. And this hypnosis audio helps you do just that. It's time that you get your mindset aligned with your manifestations. That's the missing piece. And to help you with this, I developed this free hypnosis audio recording for you to download that can help you visualize and manifest your dreams. It doesn't even matter what kind of dream you have. It can apply to any manifestation you want to bring into your life this year. Now, here's what I would recommend. I highly recommend that you listen to this recording once, ideally twice a day. And the best times to listen to any hypnosis audio recording is right when you wake up in the morning and right before you go to sleep at night. And there's a very specific reason for this. That is when our brain is already naturally moving through the theta brainwave state. So when we come in and out of sleep, we're in the delta brainwave state when we're sleeping. As we come in or as we go out of that, we move through the theta brainwave state, which is a deep state of relaxation, which is the state of hypnosis, where your subconscious mind is most receptive to suggestion, most receptive to visualization, which we do in the state of hypnosis. So you're already doing that naturally. Every single day, you already access this brainwave state naturally. So let's use it to manifest, shall we? And it's just like we talked about in this episode. Your manifestations, they're already written. And I like to think of doing this recording as kind of like reading the story of your intended future. So be sure to check out that link. It's in the show notes, or you can just go to my website. It's brittanyhoopes.com/email to download it for free now. All music for this podcast is by A Cubed. And remember, your manifestations they exist. And so now it's up to you to go and meet them. I'll catch you next time.